I don't know that I think I made it worse.
I'd like to call to order the advertised and stated monthly meeting December 13, 2022 of the Lower Moreland Township Board of Commissioners. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, the Board of Commissioners met in an executive session just prior to the opening to discuss a police personnel matter. Public participation on agenda items will be taken as each item is discussed. Under Internal Affairs, item A, review and consider minutes of November 8th, 2022. Any commissioners have any comments or corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of November 8th, 2022.
Second.
There's been motion and second to approve the minutes of November 8th, 2022. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Under item B, review and consider December 2022 bill list. Any of the commissioners have any comments on the bill list? Any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to request that we make a motion to approve the December 2022 bill list.
Second.
Been motioned and second to approve the December 2022 bill list. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Under item C, review and consider adoption of 2023 budget. Manager Hoffman, do you have any very brief summary of what we're about to do?
Yes, I do. So just there's two specific items that are in front of the board. So last month, the board adopted the resolution which set the 2023 budget and then authorized advertising of two ordinances. The first is ordinance number 767, which is the tax levy and appropriation ordinance. So through that sets all of the funding levels that are found in the actual budget document, as well as sets the real estate tax rates. So looking back to the memo from last month, there are two funds that are going to have millage increases. The first is the fire tax fund, which is increasing from 0.31 mils to 0.49, which is an average of $37.80 per year. This is to allow for all of the existing operations, shift program contributions to be made, all of our capital planning, as well as to memorialize funding for the collaboration with Bernathen Borough to hire a chief of emergency services position. So we've had that discussion all throughout the budget process. So that tax increase accomplishes those goals. And then the library tax millage is going to increase to 4.7 mils. And that is to increase their annual contribution for the first time since 2016 to a total of $510,000 per year, which fits into their 5-year financial plan more comfortably. That millage will allow us to comfortably make that contribution over that 5-year period, and is also paired with the library board's commitment to spend 3 to 5% of its operating reserves on an annual basis. So can both entities bringing some just financial consideration through that 5-year model. So that is the general budget summary. Everything else, particularly the general fund, which is our overwhelming amount of our operations and revenues and expenses, does not require a tax increase, and every other fund concept is able to be met. Then on the township's business type activities, the second ordinance that is for consideration is ordinance number 768, which will set the sewer rates for 2023. And that ordinance actually is going to reduce the sanitary sewer bill on a quarterly basis in each of the billing categories by $70 per quarter. However, the newly created stormwater fund is going to have a billing component on the existing sewer bill that goes out. There will be that same $70 reduction will establish the $70 per quarter stormwater fee, and then all of the kind of goals that go along with establishing that fund and the things that will allow the township to do to meet its obligations under our MS4 and PDES permit. Kind of combination there of both consideration of the sewer rates, but also the impact that has to create the stormwater fund. Last, there is no ordinance related to the trash fee because that will stay at the same $350 level that we have had since the beginning of our current contracts. So that is kind of baseline budget summary for the items to be considered by the board this evening.
Thank you, Manager. Any questions from the board of what the manager just described?
One quick question. So we have to do an ordinance for the sewer and basically the other things, but we don't have to do one for stormwater management?
Correct. So the way that the stormwater fee kind of flows is that because the township is not specifically authorized to collect that because our legislature has failed to acknowledge that first-class townships exist. The Lower Moreland Township Authority established the stormwater fee by resolution at their October meeting. So they are the entity that is authorized to collect it. So then the township will help with the administration of that since there is no actual authority staff. So the resolution established the fee, and then to kind of follow it through, then the township creates Fund 31, which is our stormwater fund, which will be where all of the revenues go. And then Fund 31 has its own heading within the tax levy and appropriation ordinance that sets all of the revenue expectations and the authorized expenses. So it's kind of been this dual effort between the authority and the township. And therefore, outside of the way it's considered in the tax levy and appropriation ordinance, doesn't require a separate ordinance to set the fee.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Mr. McDade, come on up.
Just have a question about the ordinance in the paper. What is the township's protocol if a mistake was made in the ordinance in the paper?
What is the mistake?
Which ordinance?
January 1st, 2022 will take effect.
So the legal notice has the 22 instead of 23.
Correct.
So John, would we need to just rerun the ad?
Do you see it there, Chris? Take effect. 22.
Which ordinance are we talking about?
It's the
It's tax levy.
Tax levy.
Wait.
No, okay.
That's the sewer.
Yeah, I think it's the sewer rates.
Yeah. With the stormwater management in there, it has it broke down with well water.
Yeah, so no, it's not the stormwater, it's the sewer rate ordinance.
Sewer rate.
So the sewer rate says that they'll take effect on
January 1st, 2022,
not 23.
not 23.
So it's advertised for, I mean, that's like a technical error in the ordinance. I don't think you need to re-advertise it. I just think the board needs to make a motion to correct the date. I mean, it's obvious that it's going to be effective 2023, not 2022. And then I'll re-advertise a post enactment ordinance, which says correct. But the board can move forward. Just make that change.
Because we could otherwise leave the sewer rate $70 more expensive if that sounds better.
No, we don't want to do
I
that.
just wanted to know the protocol, that's all. With the paper, you know, that's, if it does come up to a vote tonight for the board to change it, to agree to 2023
Yeah.
instead of 2022, correct? Right.
And that would be the motion, but
Right.
I'm then going to do a
Right.
legal ad.
I got you, right,
Saying at the hearing that was correct,
right,
and then we're good to go.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for bringing it to our attention. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, then I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 767, which is the tax levy and appropriation ordinance.
Second.
There's been motion and second to approve ordinance number 767, the tax levy and appropriation ordinance. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is a motion to approve the ordinance number 768, the 2023 sewer rates. And I'll put in the wording, which
Subject to the date being corrected to January 1, 2023.
as previously advertised incorrectly. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, I didn't get a second, I'm sorry.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Under item D, review ward redistricting update. Solicitor Rice, do you want to start that process?
Sure. What the board has in front of them is a draft ordinance that has been prepared in conjunction with the township's consultant, Amanda Holt, who's on Zoom on this call. Every 10 years after a census is performed, State Municipal Reapportionment Act requires municipalities that elect by wards. Most municipalities elect supervisors at large. So all the second-class townships elect by at large. First-class townships, boroughs, and some home rule municipalities elect through the ward system. So this board authorized this process to occur. Amanda was retained by the board to look at the numbers. Essentially, what the requirement is when you redraw wards at the municipal level is that you try to have the population as nearly equal as you can, respecting boundaries, respecting other type of parts of the municipality, et cetera. The one basic requirement is that the deviation from the mean shouldn't be 10% or more. I think what we have in this particular proposal is a relatively small deviation for all of the 6 wards. I got some feedback from some of the commissioners in terms of questions, which I passed on to Amanda, and resulting in what you have in front of you tonight, which shows that ward lines between 6 and 4 have been moved to some extent. They've been moved between 2 and 3, and in 1 and 2. There's been some changes from what was as to what is proposed. So the board adopts this. The procedure then basically is that this gets transmitted to the County Board of Elections. County Board of Elections then has to publicly approve this. And the County Board of Elections then has to put this in front of a judge in Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas, who ultimately enters an order approving the proposal or not. I mean, typically, it's approved unless there's some glaring issue. Most municipalities ignore the state law, quite frankly, in terms of reapportioning their wards. So this is the 3rd time I've done this, first time in Montgomery County. So it goes to a judge who enters an order, and that goes to the state. And then the corollary to that is there is an opportunity for the municipality to deal with precincts, because, and that's, again, it's an issue that the Board of Elections has to approve, but the township can have some say in terms of precincts and where people actually vote. But that's different from this. This is just trying to reapportion the 6 wards based on population over the past 20 years or so. So that's the process tonight, the first step. If the board is, if this is the ordinance is acceptable, then the motion tonight would be to authorize me to advertise this for your January meeting. I can tell you that I don't know what Montgomery County, how long it's going to take them to do this, because the timeline, as I understand it, is nominating petitions are usually due around the middle of February. There's some other deadlines, the end of January, and whether the Board of Elections will get this done in time is a question that I don't have an answer to. We've reached out to the county solicitor's office, and we haven't gotten a clear answer yet. We've sent them some information on how Delaware County does it. Delaware County has some fairly significant published regulations, which are still in effect. And it spells out the steps under the state act. This has nothing to do with state reapportionment, Congress, or anything else. This is strictly at the local level. So if this is approved through the county, through the state, then come the May primary, the new wards will be established and people will run. I think the odd number years are up, correct? I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
1, 3.
Coming up, 1, 3, and 5. So, and then the next time around, the even numbers will be with the new wards. So that's where we're at with it. Tonight is to see whether the board is okay with this, approve it, or authorize it to be advertised, and then come back January 10th.
Yes.
And have a public hearing on the ordinance that night. So there's a bit of a tight timeline, I can tell you. And I'm still trying to get some information from Montgomery County. I've spoken to some Lower Merion people that are doing the same thing, and they're behind us in terms of redrawing their 15 wards in that municipality. But that's a huge municipality in Montgomery County.
Is there an opportunity to collapse 41 and 42? Because they're having trouble staffing 2 voting things, right?
To collapse?
Well, so that's,
It's a different process.
Yeah, that's a precinct issue.
Yeah, there'd still be 2 wards within Ward 4 for 1 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying it's hard to staff, right?
so, and maybe before the board gets into any questions, we do have Amanda Holt on, who
sorry.
has brief remarks prepared for what the option is and how, a little bit of overview of the process.
One quick question. Stone Mill's not on that map is what I just realized.
So both new developments are not technically on this map because they were not
Part of the census.
correct. So they primarily opened after. So if there are residents that were counted as part of the census, then they are in a census block. And that is something that Amanda will explain when we get to her presentation.
Sounds good.
But for the most part, it's the 2030 census that will take in the full consideration of those new developments. They just happen to open right around or right after 2020. So Amanda?
All right, very good. Well, thank you for having me and having me do this work for you. I don't know, I can't tell if the presentation is up or not. Oh, here it comes. So you can go to the second page here. The current boundaries are kind of shown here, but I wanted to show you first sort of where this all sort of begins with the census, because population is so significant in this process. And when the Census Bureau is counting people, the smallest geographic area they use to count people is something they call a census block. So these are boundaries created by the Census Bureau to help facilitate counting people in very small geographic areas. And normally they go unnoticed because they are so small, but when you do things like this, like ward redistricting, they become very, very significant and you start paying more attention to them. So sometimes a census block can be just a really small area that may include a few houses. Some of them don't even include any people at all because they may be a park or something else. And others can have, you know, hundreds of people living in them. It just all depends. So this picture sort of you see on your screen is showing those green lines are all outlining census block. And inside each one of those census blocks is a number that shows the number of people that live inside of them. And so this is sort of the starting point in any redistricting process because the state requires that you follow these census block lines. You can't split them apart. So in determining how you're going to configure your wards, one requirement is that you have to sort of follow these lines. So that is one restriction that I just wanted to highlight for you here, that when we went through this process, we have to follow these census block lines that exist. So if you go to the next page, you can see the boundaries that exist today. And some of the districts were underpopulated when you looked at the average, meaning there were fewer people living in them than what was ideal. A couple were overpopulated, if you will, where there were more people living in those wards than what was sort of the target population. And one ward, which is Ward 5, actually was within the range and didn't need any adjustments made to it. So through the process and through the conversations that John mentioned, we reviewed several options, and you can go to the next slide. And this shows the proposal that came out. You can see that we went from a quite large overall range previously, where the smallest one was, you know, an overall range of like at least over 30%, to now being much closer together, far under the 10% threshold. And I will go through each of sort of the changes to highlight them for you. There were 3 specific changes made between the different boundaries, between the boundary of 4 and 6, 2 and 3, and 1 and 2. So if we go to the next page, this is showing the change between the boundary of Ward 2 and 1. 1 needed more people in the district. So this is showing the few census blocks that were pulled. It was 142 people that were moved from Ward 2 into Ward 1 to bring that population of that ward within the range. And I maybe should have mentioned that one of the goals was to try to minimize the changes being made in the number of people being moved, so it would have not as great of an impact, if you will, on what people are used to. On the next page shows you the change made to the boundary between Ward 2 and 3. In this instance, people were being pulled from Ward 3 into Ward 2. There were 500 or so people that were moved there, and that was the area that was chosen to try to pull those people from. And that's just another few census blocks in there that we were moving. And then the final change was in Ward 4 and 6, and they were moving about 220 people from Ward 4 into Ward 6, because Ward 6 was underpopulated and Ward 4 had more people in it. And the result of all those is the map I showed you before, which is on this last slide. And those are the boundaries as they look. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of where we're at with the ward proposal at this point. I'm happy to take questions or provide additional information.
I mean, I just want to say thank you for doing this tedious work.
You're very welcome.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
Are these maps going to be reviewable on the township webpage?
When everything's approved and goes through the final process, yeah.
Actually, Amanda, do you have a website where this could be looked at?
Yes, I don't know if I put the link in this one, but I can, yes, I can send you the link again so that you have that to share.
Okay.
And the township's practice would be to, once the ordinance is advertised, then we would put that in the legal notices portion of the website. So we can have a link or just a map attached to that.
I mean, it'll be advertised, if the board approves it tonight, it'll be advertised in the next week or so. So it'll be available.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions before I make a motion to advertise? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to advertise the ward redistricting plan as described. It's been motioned and second to advertise the word redistricting plan as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Under item E, review and consider health plan update. Manager Hoffman, do you want to take that one?
I can do that. You don't want to parse your way through all of this? So the collective bargaining agreements, I think, which all took effect earlier this year, all accomplished a change of the township's health plan. So for the first time, I think in about 12 years, where we're changing the plan, and everybody's going to go on to the same option compared to previously having two options with different kind of buy-in kind of concepts. So the new plan is a high deductible PPO, and the township is going to fund the deductible value for each employee through either a health savings account or whatever the acronym of HRA, health reimbursement account, means. So in order to implement this, which has all been part of these negotiations, has been incorporated into the budget, so this is just this final administrative step. There are two resolutions in front of the board. The first is in relation to the HSA, which putting the deductible value into the HSA is technically income. So the township has what's called a cafeteria plan, which makes any of these pre-tax contributions kind of compliant with the IRS code. So in order to implement the PPO high deductible plan with the HSA, that's that first resolution, which is number 22-40. Then the second one, which is number 22-41, is for employees who will go onto the HRA. So some of our what we'll call more seasoned employees, such as a Bob Shattuck, who are not eligible for an HSA because their age has hit Medicare eligibility. They're not able to take advantage of an HSA per IRS regulations. So in order to provide the same type of benefit, we can start HRA accounts, but HRAs, because it's a reimbursement from an IRS perspective, is not income, therefore does not need to be incorporated into the cafeteria plan. So the second resolution establishes the HRA plan concept for the three, I believe, employees who would access their plan that way. So those are the two resolutions that would then authorize Commissioner SIRKEN as president and me as secretary to sign off on all of the necessary plan documents so that those plans can take effect on January 1st of 2023.
Thank you for that summary. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public about the health plan? Okay, so we take this in two motions or something?
Yes, please.
Is there any numbers for them or just?
So the first one is number 22-40.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 22-40 as described.
Second.
The motion and second to approve resolution number 22-40. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, have it. And I guess 22-41.
Correct.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 22-41.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded to approve resolution number 22-41. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
And just as one final note on that, while I had the opportunity to do the public description of it, EJ's efforts to actually put all of that together, coordinating the insurance company, the company that will help manage the HSA and the HRA, coordination with John Rice's office and all of that. I appreciate those efforts greatly, while I just got to do a 30-second summary. So thank you.
Great. Okay, under item F, review and consider appointment of alternate right to know officer. Right now, our township right to know officer is Manager Hoffman. As many know, the police department is going through a potential for a accredited police department, and the standard would be to have somebody from the police department be an alternate right to know officer for any requests that come in regard to police matters. So our recommendation is to have Lieutenant Scott Smith as the township's alternate right to know officer. Any questions from the board?
So this is, so who is the right to know officer?
Right now, it's Manager Hoffman.
So there's only one.
Now we're,
I mean, the term is alternate right to know officer, so I'm wondering if Lieutenant Smith is replacing Manager Hoffman, or he's going to be his alternate.
So Scott is being appointed as the alternate to me. I will remain primary
Okay,
for all other township requests, anything specific to police reports. Essentially, if it comes to me, I will forward to Scott for.
and Solicitor Rice, this is standard to have someone from the police department be the person to do this.
Well, what happens is there's two types of right to knows that we get. and some are for township operations. And there's companies that'll say, we want to see all the permits for this subdivision over the last 6 months. So these are like people looking for, selling windows or something. So, or we want to see minutes or this or that. The other type we get, and then Chris, I think, will continue to do that. The other type we get are from lawyers asking for police records, videotape, cameras, things that are more police oriented. So I think Lieutenant Smith will handle those. And there's another act, there's a right to know law, and there's another act called CRIA, Criminal History Records Information Act, that if you release records in violation of CRIA, you can be charged, right, Chief?
Yes.
I think it's a misdemeanor. And a lot of lawyers don't understand that. So the one thing we get subpoenas, and we oppose the subpoenas because we can't release CRIA records. We make a judge tell us to release the records. I mean, we've had, I think, 1 or 2 of those in the last year. So that's, and it's good to have an alternate, because you have to have, if someone answers a right to know request, it's not designated as a right to know officer, then there's an argument that it's an invalid answer. So it's good to have a backup.
I'm just worried about segregation of duties, but
No, it's not. No,
It's
it's
not a
not.
problem. It's not an
They blend over. I mean, sometimes we get requests that, say from attorneys, it's usually attorneys, that are making requests, or we get a subpoena and they want both types of records. So, and then in my office, there's Matt Hoover handles, or Joel Steinman.
For us,
Usually Joel Steinman, but Matt Hoover in my office, who's a former assistant DA in Bucks County, he'll get involved. If we have to file a motion to quash in court, either Joel or Matt will appear. Because you can be penalized under CRIA if you release. And unfortunately, a lot of police departments do that because they don't know any better.
So, and our process will still be collaborative. So as my memo had pointed out, for all of these, particularly for the police records, because more than just right to know is implicated, we often aren't comfortable just making the decision without legal counsel. So Joel and Scott have already worked together several times. So now this will just remove me from the consideration for the frequency that we get these.
oh,
It's several per week.
wow.
So Scott will be able to sign the letter that says, here are the records, or or you're not getting the records because of this reason under the Right to Know Act, which is, and the issue is a right to know request has to be responded to within 5 business days.
Oh, wow.
So it's, sometimes, it's actually not that hard to comply with, because you can ask for up to a 30-day extension for specific reasons. So most municipalities are used to it now, because this all changed in 2009, that law changed, and some people abuse it. I mean, literally, there's commercial people that ask for records because they want to sell windows.
Yeah, the greatest abuse of the law is all of the commercial requests, literally for a list of every building permit or electrical permit. And then that is the way that people are getting addresses to be able to send the next round of junk mail.
The old state law, you had to be a Pennsylvania resident to make those requests. And, you could just deny it. You get a letter from Texas saying, I want all the permits. But now you have to respond, and it's, I don't know how many a year Lower Moreland gets, but some townships get hundreds a year, right to know requests. So it's a bit of a burden, but
Yeah, our internal process can handle it. There's weeks where I spend more time on right to know requests than I would otherwise choose. But this kind of process where we have kind of the shared legal counsel and Joel, and me managing the non-police requests, Scott managing the ones that are, but following the same type of review every time, gives me confidence that the policy is a sound one. And the implication that the police might deny records that otherwise they shouldn't be, that kind of thing, I'm not concerned will be a part of this process. And God forbid there's a appeal process that we've been a part of before, and you just participate in that objectively.
Okay, great.
And it also helped the accreditation process by parsing it out like this as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Lieutenant Scott Smith as Lower Moreland Township's alternate right to know officer.
Second.
So in motion and second to appoint Lieutenant Scott Smith as the township's alternate right to know officer. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Under item G, administration report, Manager Hoffman.
All right, so a couple of items that I wanted to report on tonight. So the first, to what extent I alluded to this in my report, but the high school project, they've come across a overall like site improvement challenge and potentially some budgetary considerations in regards to their stormwater design and ultimately where their on-site system will discharge into PennDOT infrastructure. And the storm pipe in Red Lion Road is old. It was tough for them to locate. They've had several challenges. And ultimately, the feedback that they got from PennDOT is either they need to put a new pipe in Red Lion Road, which would involve them opening the road and having to restore it, or being able to put a new pipe on their own property and connect at a point further down Red Lion Road. So whatever the solution is that's going to add 6 figures to the high school project, which I think all along when you try to manage a project on the scale of $70 million, these are the types of things that may come up. So knowing that this had come up, we offered some assistance given our dealing with either on the review side or even our own projects of understanding the HOP process with PennDOT, understanding some of the agreements that we do with developers where when they make a stormwater improvement, ultimately PennDOT now gifts that to the township as an obligation, and then we enter into these HOP indemnity agreements with the developer where we have an obligation to maintain up to a certain dollar level, but then we put obligations back onto the developer for the more significant type improvements that one day may be necessary. So talking out all of these ideas, I think Tim Woodrow, Anton Kuhner from McCann and I did a call with school district staff and consultants, and we're trying to come up with different grant opportunities, either ones that we currently had or other programs that were out there, given our experience, so that they might be able to offset this cost. We thought participating in this was a good neighborly thing to do because we all serve the same local taxpayer. And ultimately what came out of this is that the district is going to be applying for a DCED small water and sewer grant. Part of that though is that only municipalities are eligible to apply. So over the last couple of days, Anton and I have been collaborating with the school district so that Pannoni, their engineer, can actually file the application, but do so in the township's name. Well, then if they're successful before any grant agreement is signed, set up how the actual reimbursement or pass through of funds would work with the district. So for right now, I just wanted the board to be aware and give the opportunity if there are any concerns for kind of the scale of effort that we're putting in to assist with this. And then probably as soon as January, we would have a resolution for the board to consider that would be part of the application process. That would actually be done post application because that has to be in sometime in December. And then we would wait to find out if the township on the district's behalf is successful. And when we would find that out, we would then fill in those details with an agreement, however that needed to be structured. But so wanted the board to be aware that is collaboration that we are working on now. Are there any questions about that before I move on?
I'm sure the taxpayers thank you for trying to keep their costs down.
All right, then the next item that I had was,
Public.
oh, there is.
Do you have a total amount of for the grant that you're going to ask for?
At this point, I do not know. So once we get the draft application from Pannoni, then I would know that I would know their total. It's going to be several $100,000.
Not millions?
To my knowledge, no, but I don't know for sure.
Just asking.
It's a pipe, it's an expensive pipe.
900,000.
Which one to save the taxpayers money?
So then my next item is in relation to the Philmont Pine Tomlinson intersection design. I guess at the end of last week, so this project now, the township had been helping drive the engineering of that through the preliminary design phase. We had a grant that helped fund that. That's now closed out. So we've now moved on to where McMahon is doing this work on PennDOT's behalf. So one of their subcontractors was out beginning Friday to do infiltration testing as part of the stormwater design for those ultimate improvements. So that's going to kind of continue in the next scale of kind of finalizing all of the engineering that goes into that project so that hopefully the funding for construction can be authorized sooner than later. Next is the Fetters Mill Bridge. So we were copied on correspondence from PennDOT's cultural resources professional who, on behalf of the federal government for the way that these funds come through those federal highway dollars, when they had the preliminary design approved and then they go into the right-of-way and acquisition phase, both Aqua and Pico have utilities that cross on that bridge structure. So when they made their request for kind of new additional services, that started another review process and required the historic review component to be restarted. So they finally issued their letter that of either no impact or no adverse impact, which are the two acceptable standards for the bridge to be able to continue. We also did find out that both utilities had received their DEP permitting to be able to do the utility work. So the period of time that they gave us, I think for the possibility of doing that work is a year's worth of time. But I think we did hear from one of the utilities that they were starting possibly as soon as like a week and a half ago. So Aqua's out there now. So that's the start of kind of real activity on the bridge. So for, I guess, all of the local challenge and insinuation is what the county may or may not do. Sometimes the bureaucratic process is just a ridiculous bureaucratic process. So hopefully that's going to continue its progress, and some of us will be able to commute over the Fetters Mill Bridge in a few years. And then the last thing that I wanted to update was just that with the non-discrimination ordinance approved last month, the township did post on its website through the email list and on Facebook that the HR mediator position, the volunteer position, we posted a volunteer job announcement for that. So we are asking for anybody who is interested in that role to submit a cover letter and resume to me by December 30th. And then after that, I'll come back to the board with the list of applicants and we'll determine what kind of interview process the board would like to do for that. So that is what I have for this evening, unless there are any other questions.
Any questions for Manager? Any questions from the public? Assistant Manager Lee.
All right, just like to report that since our last meeting, we closed on 2 more grants, one of them being the one that Manager Hoffman just talked about, which is the Philmont Pine Tomlinson planning grant. We received funding for that for $150,000, and that grant is now closed. In addition to the DEP 902 grant for the compost site that was established a year ago, and we received funds for that for $310,000. So those are 2 more grants that are closed. So that gives us opportunities to apply for at least 2 more grants in the next year in place of those. The next newsletter, we are aiming for a February distribution. So planning for that will begin probably next week. Year end for financials has started earlier this month, and starting January, we will formally start the year-end process and close the books, and auditing will begin, which will be a really fun time. And then finally, as you're all aware, the township recently upgraded our email server to Office 365. Thank you for all of your patience as we underwent a monumental process in that. I know email was down for many of you, and it was a painful process for some, but most of that has been completed, and still working out small details at the end, but everybody should be back up and running for the most part. We're at like 95% at this rate. Yeah, I mean, the main reason for the upgrade though really was for a more secure email system for the township. We are moving into a multi-factor authentication process, which is available through the Office 365. Just because cybersecurity has been such an issue. And so as part of the requirements that are set forth by our property liability insurance, you know, we are required to do that to be in compliance to continue to be covered by that. That is it for me. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Just imagine any questions? Board, for the public? Okay. Under item H, tax collectors report, we have our elected tax collector on the call, Ms. Sale.
Thank you very much. Regular tax collection at the face is 97.70%. The actual dollars collected is 96.14% for a total of $5,622,312. Trash collection is although part of the bill is collected separately, they're at 98.44%, or the actual collected is 96.83% for a total of $1,420,300. The outstanding balance for regular taxes to be collected by December 31st prior to leaning is $132,082 even. The county meets with us, the tax collectors, tomorrow afternoon from 1 to 3 to give us our instructions for settlement. And settlement will begin January the 9th after all of the payments are received and processed. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Sal.
Thank you.
Would request that her report be accepted as submitted. Under item I, my liaison reports, I attended the Civil Service Commission meeting, and under Commissioner CANALE's report, he'll go over the findings from that meeting. And I also attended the last school board of directors meeting. They had their reorganization meeting, and they re-elected the same president and vice president. And that completes the internal affairs. The chair now recognizes Commissioner KURITZ, Chair of the Community Development Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. The first item on my agenda is review and consider consultants fee schedule. We all have it attached as a resolution to amend Chapter 108, which is our subdivision of land fee schedule. Per our municipality's planning code, it includes the rates of our professional consultants for 2023. Next year, I can't believe it's the end of the year. These are the rates that are paid per professional services agreements by a developer, which is land development, or a resident for creating permit. The fees are listed. Therefore, our civil engineering, our planner, our authority engineering, traffic engineering, legal fees, and our plan review. And they're attached to resolution number 2242. This is standard, what we do every year. Manager Hoffman, would you like to add anything? I think these are reasonable rates. Did anything go up slightly from last year to this year?
All of them had a slight increase to them, just like either a couple of dollars per hour, a couple percent, other than McMahon as the traffic engineer. I do talk with colleagues just to see what professional consultants kind of averages are, and we are not out of line in any of ours. Several of them were significantly lower. And also, I think while an hourly rate is obviously relevant, the way that we use each of these consultants for professional time, there are other controls. So not one of these proposed increases, even though what specifically in this resolution is just what we pass on for land development applications and grading permits. Many of those rates will be similar for what the township incurs. None of these fees required any increase to any of the singular budgetary line items. So say, for example, the planner rate is at $142 per hour, which on an hourly basis might be a little bit high. The actual planning time that implicated our general fund for 2022 was less than $2,000. Everything else that we do with gratuitous or planner I either get a specific proposal for the job task or is part of the land development review process, and kind of their being the expert in our zoning ordinance is a very valuable part of that process. All of that cost is borne by developers. So I kind of look at each one of them that way. And because of that, I'm very comfortable recommending that the board proceed with this fee schedule.
Absolutely. Does anyone from the board have any questions regarding these fees? Does anyone from the public have any questions regarding any or professional staff fees? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. I'll have a resolution number 2242, and it's basically I would like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2242 as described, accepting chapter 108 subdivision of land with the attached fee.
Second.
There's been motion and second to approve resolution number 22-42 as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Next item on my agenda is the building officials report. Bob is still busy, but there are 69 total permits for the month of November. Been seeing a little bit of drop off. We still had 785 permits year to date. And last year to date, we had 945 permits. Back to November, out of those 69 permits that were issued for the month, 58 residential, 11 commercial. We had 12 certificate of occupancies, and there were 117 inspections by type: building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, signs, stormwater management, and zoning permits. Still building permits, there were 58, and electrical 27 were still the highest. We had 96 residential inspections and 21 commercial inspections. We had Bob, our PD, and all our staff. I always say this every month. Answer a lot of calls, go out on a lot of site visits. 67 were listed under Bob's monthly list under complaint, violation, visit notices issued, and he gives days to comply, and he has an action stated, and he's listed by words for us out of all 6 wards. So I always highlight how much our staff takes on in that department, and I thank them every month. So thank you all. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. There's a lot of follow-up there and a lot of work. Under use and occupancy certificates, we had 1 business use and occupancy, 19 construction use and occupancy certificates. Does anyone have any question for Bob Shattuck or Bob Schaller regarding this report? In your words, anyone from the public? Zoom? If not, I'll accept Bob's report as submitted and thank them again. Under my liaison report, my positions are the Planning Commission, Community Events, and Moreland Township School District DEI Committee. The Planning Commission, there's no meeting expected to take place this month for December. Community Events, the Lower Moreland Police Department just had their ugly sweater walk run. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend, Chief, but I heard it was great and it was a success. Also, the police department and the fire company earlier this month had a pack the police car.
Correct.
Sorry I missed that. I heard that was great also. And the Montgomery Fire Company this Saturday is going to have the Santa run around the town. So it's on Facebook. I shared it. If everyone visit their page, they have a few stops listed. The Hyde Valley Library, Commissioner CANALE will highlight that and those events. For our future events gearing into the spring, we have some spring events and workshops we're already talking about, which is, will be our spring tree planting, our Earth Day event, and our egg hunt. We're already talking about planning. I spoke to Vanessa today. So that about wraps it up for events, and I'll be talking to our planning meeting in January with our volunteer committee. So finally, for Moreland Township School District DEI Committee, it was held virtually. That was on November 21st. It was my first meeting, and they're reviewing a book called Belonging Through a Culture of Diversity, the Keys to Successful Equity Implementation. They have a wonderful consultant, diversity consultant. Her name is Barbara Moore Williams, who led the meeting with the school district members and the committee. We broke out into committee groups, and I found it to be a wonderful experience. The next meeting is in person, January 30th at Murray Avenue School. And I'll give everyone an update. To conclude tonight, I would like to wish everyone, our staff and our community, a happy holidays, full of peace, joy, happiness, health, love, and light. Chairman, close my agenda for this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Kurtz. The chair now recognizes Commissioner CANALE, Chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Sirkin. First matter I have tonight is the civil service regulations update. I'd like to turn that over to Chief Scarrato and give a summary.
The November Civil Service Commission meeting, the Civil Service Board voted to approve changes to the civil service rules. Just to give you a little bit of background, back in 2020, we kind of started the process of looking at the civil service rules as they were and trying to find areas that we could address to make them function better for the hiring process, promotional processes, and also to better organize the police department. So in 2020, the civil service solicitor that's assigned with the commission did some research for me related to the weights of oral interviews and written test scores, and the setup of the eligibility list for hiring, and made some suggestions and recommendations. Over the last 3 years, a couple different times, we discussed with the Civil Service Commission various aspects of the civil service rules that could be modified, and there's many rules that cannot be modified. Through that whole process, we came up with 15 items that we think will help the civil service rules function better for the police department and the township, recognizing that in this day and age with recruitment and retention issues for a lot of law enforcement organizations, we want to make sure that we're giving our organization the best way and the easiest functional procedures to get the best candidates for Lower Moreland Township, but also make sure that we remain competitive with retention and recruitment. So some of the things that we addressed, I know I provided through the township manager a detailed list of all the different items. Just to give you a summary of some of them in a general area. One of the things we talked about is changing the weight for new hires from a 60% weight for oral interviews. I'm sorry, written scores, and then 40% for oral interviews, to put that in line with our promotional exam, which is 50-50. A civil service solicitor did some research on that and found that to be something that is done many different places under current civil service rules. We also talked about adjusting the age requirement from 18 to 21. In this day and age, many law enforcement organizations have not only changed it higher than 18, but have requirements for higher education, degrees. We elected to recommend to the Civil Service Board to change it to 21 years of age. We just think that's a more appropriate age for the level of decision-making that police officers have to make today, in this day and age, with the amount of technology that we're dealing with. We think that's a wise decision. Another thing was just having the licensing requirements for a driver's license to match the MOPEC, which is the governing body of Pennsylvania. Previously, ours said you must have maintained a Pennsylvania driver's license, whereas the state only requires a valid driver's license. So we have officers that live quite a distance away, and we didn't want to hinder us having applicants who may be 15 minutes away just across New Jersey, and under current rules, they wouldn't be eligible to be considered here. So that's an example of some. Additionally, adjusting promotional process more to align with our hiring process protocols. Another discussion that we've gone back and forth, both with the PBA, and I've made recommendations to the township manager and board previously, is adding the rank of corporal. There was discussion about doing that prior to the last collective bargaining agreements. And for that conversation really to happen, we had to make sure we put them into these civil service rules. So that was another recommendation that we made, was to add that new rank into the civil service rules, so we can decide as an organization to move forward with that process. That also helps us with recruiting. When we looked at promotional, the requirements for promotion, years of experience related to the prior rules, all experience was tied to Lower Moreland Township. We've been recruiting from Philadelphia. In fact, the officer is going to pass his probation today, has 8 years prior police experience. So in order for us to be able to recruit people like that are really high quality from other organizations, they need to be able to come into our organization with an expectation that they can compete for promotions within a reasonable amount of time. So that was why we made that type of recommendation. The last time any of our rules were changed, the last thing, one of the last big things that we talked about was probationary period. The previous rules with the civil service rules basically said if we had an officer who was doing poorly throughout their probationary period, we could not terminate them except for a very small amount of areas of violation of the civil service rules. So just because they weren't performing up to standards, we would have to maintain their employment through the entire year. And it had caused us situations where we had people in training that we weren't even comfortable putting them out on their own. So if they didn't decide to resign, we would have to basically pay them and babysit them for the entire 12-month period. So we adjusted the rules to allow for after a 6-month period of time, if they have not been put out on solo duty, which is usually occurs about 3 months into their employment, then we would have the opportunity to release them from employment. So again, these are all just primarily all recommendations that will improve the organizational function and opportunities for employees that we recruit. We haven't made any changes since 2016. And I have a detailed list that was provided to the board. If there's questions, I'll be able to assist with them either now or in between now and whenever the board were to elect to approve the changes that the Board of Civil Service Commission has already voted for.
Any questions from the board members? Anything from the public? No. Motion to approve.
So not yet. So we wanted to introduce this to the board tonight because there were just a lot of concepts to consider. So this will then be turned into a resolution and a more formal consideration. And since there were no questions, we'll bring that back to the board for the January meeting.
Gotcha.
But I appreciate the willingness to pursue.
I was ready. All right, that brings me to my second portion, and that is the review and appointment of police officer McBride. One second, as I just have it right here. Chief, do you want to take this, or you want me to go over this?
I can do this for you.
Go for
The
it.
11-month review, we had a meeting for Officer McBride. And during that meeting, everyone that was involved in his supervision and training for the last 12 months attended. During that period, he was praised for his work ethic, his professional demeanor, outstanding decision-making, and overall knowledge of the profession. He's a team player, stepping up when needed, and a good example for others, even some of our more senior officers. Officer McBride was his own worst critic, taking any criticism to heart, and he improved in any areas that were brought to his attention over the course of the year. Officer McBride is a very fit officer and was a leader amongst the many of our officers in that area. He was allowed to take the regional SWAT team test just last month, and he finished #1 over approximately 9 officers from the region. He had a perfect score in the oral interview. So Officer McBride is going to have the opportunity to get on the SWAT team next year. And Officer McBride was strongly recommended by all members and believes he'll be a valuable employee well into his future. So my recommendation and the unanimous recommendation of everyone that trained him is that he be kept.
Any questions from the board? Anything from the public? This time I'm going to make a motion to approve. Thanks, Chris. Can I get a second?
Second.
There's been motion and second to permanently appoint Officer John McBride as a member of the Lower Moreland Police Department effective December 20th, 2022. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
All right, police personnel matters. The board met this evening for an executive session at 6:30 to review 3 personnel matters with Chief Scarrato. While most HR matters are handled by the township appointed officials, the first class township code gives the authority to remove, suspend, or demote police officers to the Board of Commissioners. Each recommendation is consistent with the township's efforts for progressive discipline. So I want to make a motion to accept Chief Scarrato's disciplinary recommendation for Officer Kelly Heiss. Any questions from the board? Anything from the public? Making the motion. Second.
Okay, for the call for the vote, I have to recuse myself from the vote because I'm a member of the Civil Service Commission. And if there was an appeal by any of the officers, I will be able to do my duties on the Civil Service Commission to hear the appeal. So it has been motioned and second to accept Chief Scarrato's disciplinary recommendations for Officer Kelly Heiss. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
So next one is a motion to accept Chief Scarrato's disciplinary recommendations for Sergeant Julia Huddick. Any questions from the board? Anything from the public? I'm going to be making that motion to accept Chief Scarrato's disciplinary recommendation for Sergeant Julia Huddick. Second, please.
Second.
It has been motioned and second to accept Chief Scarrato's disciplinary recommendations for Sergeant Julia Huddick. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. And just to clarify, you're recusing on all 3 of these.
Correct.
Third one, motion to
So could you just, those in favor, please signify by saying aye again.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
A motion to accept Chief Scarrato's disciplinary recommendation for Officer Sierra Volker. Any questions from the board? Questions from the public? I'd like to make a motion to accept Chief Scarrato's disciplinary recommendation for Officer Sierra Volker. Second.
It has been motioned and seconded to accept Chief Scarrato's disciplinary recommendation for Officer Sierra Welker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Chief, turn it over to you for your report.
Okay, I'm up here way too long today, so I'll try to make it quick for you. Over the month of November, we investigated several serious crimes against person. One was a strong arm robbery of a delivery driver at the Wawa at Philmont Red Line Road. In addition, we had a series of burglaries and pretty common this time of year along Huntington Pike corridor. I think I mentioned them last month. We're continuing to have difficulties with thefts from catalytic converters. So we again ask our residents to call us if they see suspicious people in and around their homes or in their driveways or near their vehicles. In addition, we had one example of a theft by deception of guitars, and that was basically where someone meets someone to do a purchase from the internet, from like the Facebook marketplace. Want to remind all our residents that we have a meetup spot location on camera here at Lower Moreland Township Police Department for them to do safe exchanges. This was an exchange that occurred down in the city, and then the person wound up getting tricked and had several $1,000s in guitars stolen, and we are investigating that. thefts from autos continue to be a problem this time of year. We had some criminal mischiefs related to eggings. 4 drug violations, 5 DUIs this month, so that was not too terrible for our history around here. And 1 warrant arrest out of Ben Salem for someone in our jurisdiction that we turned over to Ben Salem PD. For our community events, we completed the 2nd annual Lower Moreland Police Citizens Police Academy. It was a huge success. Participants had a behind the scenes look at the operation of the Lower Moreland Police Department. We got great feedback from that. Additionally, we participated in 2 food drives. One was for the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. The other was run by our SWAT team, a regional SWAT team, East Region for Montgomery County. Both groups ended up with large boxes of food just in time for Thanksgiving. And then many people might have heard, or at our ugly sweater run, the newest member of our department, K9 Thor, is in service with Officer Sam Hashimi Sohi. And they completed a 480-hour training program down at University of Pennsylvania Dog Working Group. And I can report that in his first week, Officer Thor and his handler Sam had 2 tracks, one for shooting in Northeast Philadelphia and another one related to pursuit out of another jurisdiction in our region. They did a great job, so we're already seeing benefits of using Thor and Kermit both on the street. Any questions?
Let them linger up there a little.
Marshal Shelley.
Evening, Commissioners. Our department had some minor incidents during the month of November. We had a large lawnmower on fire at the Philmont Country Club. We had a small heater fire on Andrew Road. The crews did an outstanding job on both of those. We had a small gas leak on a contractor who hit a gas line inside of a home down on Ann Street. And we had a burn fruit called, a little bit of smoke and an alarm down at the Gloria Days House. Rich Worthington and I attended some Eastern Montgomery County meetings for the end of the year. We're looking to start some up. The county is looking to start some new training. There are some new guidelines. So we're looking to see what our certifications require to keep our CEUs up to date. We met with Bill Miles, the Lower Moreland High School principal, and then we discussed some evacuation procedures with the high school. And then we presented our findings to the Safe School Committee. Basically, the idea was if we had to move the children from the high school, where would we put them at? We had to come up with a couple of ideas. We're also looking at some areas in the township. The biggest problem is once we move the students is the accountability part of it. So that's still an ongoing working in progress. Rich did an outstanding job. He did an active intruder drill at the Huntington Valley Surgical Center on Byberry Road. We had some different scenarios with staff, and they love the training, and they're going to have actually some more training sometime in the spring. We also did a weather emergency at the St. Albert School. We both met the new safety director for Vernon Athens School and Colleges. He has some fire training and FBI background. And we have a new school resource officer for the county. We attended that via Zoom, and we'll be working with him sometime next year. As far as the county, still monitoring COVID, the flu. There's really no other new information to pass on. And as far as the inspections are looking good, we found three UNOs we found 3 businesses that had no UNOs at 2337 Philmont. And that ended up being up to a total of 8. So I'll be doing some inspections over there next year in January to finalize and clean up that building. And Bob and I are still working on some illegal businesses on Man Road, Philmont Avenue, and Frank's.
Board, anything from the public? Thank you, Fire Marshal Shelley. takes me to my liaison reports. HVAA has basketball starting up the next couple of weeks. It should be fun. Dugouts are in progress up in Abbeville, coming along well. And that's all I have with HVAA. For the library, I attended the board meeting this week, or excuse me, this month. They have two special movies during the winter break. Friday, December 23rd at 10:30 a.m. They'll be showing Minions: The Rise of Gru. And Friday, December 30th at 10:30 a.m. they will show DC League of Super Pets. Both are free and open to all. Thursday, January 5th, they have another event at 1 p.m. Meet indie author Tom Sims, where he discusses the book is better. Thursday, January 19th at 7 p.m. there will be a free health and fitness seminar with Carl from No Bull Training. Start the new year off with the right and get some tips. So that's the deal there. Oh, and lastly, the library has purchased Consumer Reports online database. It's available from home to Old Hampton Valley Library card holders, or it's available on any public computer in the library, no card needed. The library will be starting a new social club and new technology classes in early 2023. Check out the website for more information, hvlibrary.org. That's all I have. Back to you, Dr. Sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Canale. The chair now recognizes Commissioner Pace, Chair of the Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Doctor. Item R, review and consider Lower Moreland Park Field Fencing Bid Award. Bids went out on December 7th for the park backstop and sideline fencing project. 3 bids were received. Chester County Fencing came in at $59,499. County Line Fence came in at second at $69,900. Promax Fence Systems came in third at $110,491. Staff has made a recommendation to award this project to Chester County Fencing. Anybody from the board have any questions? Questions from the public? I'm sure Steve will keep a good eye on Chester County Fencing during this project, right, Steve?
Absolutely.
So no questions. I'd like to make a motion to award the Lower Moreland Park backstop and siding fencing bid to Chester County Fencing in the amount of $59,499.
Second.
There's been motion and second to award Lower Moreland Park backstop and sideline fencing bid to Chester County Fencing in the amount of $59,499. As described, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Item S, review and consider intermunicipal agreement for DEP 904 grant. Each year, the township contracts with Hugh Associates to prepare a DEP 904 grant application. DEP provides grant funds based on the documented recycling tonnage in the township. For some years, Hugh Associates will inform us that we can increase our grant award by applying jointly with a neighboring municipality. For 2022, we had the opportunity to apply jointly with Upper Moreland and increase our awards by a combined of $27,075. Since the last time we filed a joint application, DEP now requires an intermunicipal agreement approved by resolution from each governing body. Solicitor Rice prepared the attached resolution and agreement for the board's consideration, which will also be forwarded to Upper Moreland. If approved, we will then provide this documentation to Q Associates for application, which is due by December 30th of this year. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? So I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 22-43, approve the intermunicipal agreement with Upper Moreland for a joint DEP 904 grant application.
Second.
It's been motioned and second to approve resolution number 22-43 as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Item T is Public Works. Hand it over to Steve.
Couple things real quick. November obviously is always our busiest leaf month, and my mayor, ladies all know that we'll be done this week, so we'll be done on schedule, despite the fact we had our struggles with seasonal employees. So, but it's a good thing we will be done this week.
We did planted 15 bare root trees again this fall, carrying that on, and Pine Road School planted 4 trees. We have a partnership with a teacher there who's the environmental whatever, and she each year plants some kind of trees with the kids over there. So.
I described my career the same way.
Oh, that's
The library, we've been chasing some roof leaks again and some window leaks, but we're working on that with Pam. Commissioner Canale mentioned 2 dugouts are already up at the fields up at Aberdale. He's raised plans, he's doing 1 a weekend for the next 6 weeks, so he's got 4 more weeks, and he's progressing pretty nice. As far as the bid, that was about $20,000 under what our original estimate was for the fencing, so that was a good win for us, especially in these times. Yeah. That's about all I got.
Steve, we have one more I forgot on my events. We have that Martin Luther King Day project that we've been talking about with Mr. Miles. So he's very excited and very happy to work on the chipping, or work on the inside projects, painting.
I think he's gonna do some painting at the
Painting
library.
at the library
and
common area
request it,
and chip
we
the,
can chip the trail.
and chip the trail
out
at Valley Center Park. So he just can't wait. So he said, whatever you want to do, either exactly on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, or if you want to do it on the
I think that's
weekend,
when they want to do it. So
whatever you want to
We'll
do,
work it out.
we'll work it out, you and I, and
Mhm.
we'll let him know and go. So that's what we have planned under a January event.
Good stuff. Thank you, Steve.
All good
you.
stuff,
I
all
appreciate it.
good things.
Next item, the liaison report. My liaison position is Historical Architectural Review Board. There are no new applications to discuss. And that finishes my agenda, Dr. Sherman.
Thank you, Commissioner Pace. The chair now recognizes Commissioner Housen, Chair of the Public Property Committee.
The Lower Moreland Township Authority member Frank Spada. His position is set to expire on January 2nd, 2023. He'd like to serve another 5-year term. Staff recommends the board proceed with his reappointment. Does anybody have any questions before I make a motion? Anybody? else? Very few people. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 22-44, reappointing Frank Spada Jr. to the Lower Moreland Township Authority for a 5-year term commencing January 3rd, 2023 and ending January 2nd, 2028.
Second.
It has been motioned and second to approve resolution number 22-44 as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
My liaison positions are the Lower Moreland Township Authority, which I think has already been discussed. Although I do know that the letters informing people who have never gotten a bill before that they will be getting a bill is going out soon.
Yeah, later this week. So the letter is drafted. We were waiting for the budget to be adopted tonight, formalizing the fund, so they'll be ready to go now that it's adopted.
So that's mostly my folks, but some of you may be affected, so I'm sure people may be affected as well, so just be aware when they say that the hell is it still no. So that's it for Township Authority, and the Code Board of Appeals did not meet. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Housen. The chair now recognizes Commissioner Ozer, Chair of the Ordinance Committee.
Thank you. Last month, the board authorized advertising an ordinance, which does 2 things in chapter 198 concerning vehicles and traffic. Number 1, it prohibits parking without permission on the private property of 2245 Huntington Pike, which is Auto Express Spa. Second, it prohibits left turns from Inverness Lane onto Welsh Road. The ordinance has been advertised as prescribed by law and may be considered by the board. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? All right, then I make a motion to approve ordinance number 769 as described.
Second.
It has been motioned and second to approve ordinance number 769. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Next, review and consider zoning hearing board appointment. In October, advised the term of zoning hearing board member Eric Reyes was set to expire on January 4th, 2023. Mr. Reyes has indicated his interest to serve a new 3-year term. Staff recommends the board proceed with his reappointment, I'm sorry. Questions?
I think there's a typo.
Yep, so the motion should be 2023 to 2026. I'd like to sabotage one from. Continue.
Set to expire in 2022, I'm sorry, January 4th, 2022. Any other questions?
Wait, so that part's actually correct.
That's correct.
So the appointment expires January 4th, 2023.
Oh, I hadn't gotten to the part that was wrong. I knew that, and then you threw me off, so I caught you.
I wanted to get ahead of the problem.
You messed me up. See, I knew it. All right. Any questions from the public? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 22-45, reappointing Eric Reyes to the zoning hearing board for a 3-year term commencing on January 5th, 2023 and ending on January 4th, 2026.
Nailed it.
Second.
Is the motion and
What's going on here?
second to approve resolution number 22-45 as described? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Next, review zoning hearing board agenda and decisions. The zoning hearing board has 2 applications for their December meeting. Application number 22-18, the application of William Schwemline of 1055 Hillview Turn, who seeks a variance to allow an increase in the allowed lot coverage from 25% to 36%. And then application number 22-19, the application of Artak Garian of 106 Fireberry Road, who seeks a special exception to allow an assisted living facility for the elderly. And we may wish to consider a decision on this application.
Position.
Well, have you heard from your board? Because it affects. Wait,
Yeah, that's Chris's word.
yeah, Chris, it affects your board.
All right,
Have you heard from any of your people? Because I have.
I have not.
Oh, jeez. And it's on Facebook, which I'm on way too much, but it's a relaxation technique. But anyways, they are complaining and worried about the number of staff and traffic coming in and out because the sight lines for 106 Fireberry Road are very poor. And people drive way too fast on Library Road. I don't know if that section is 25 miles per hour.
It is.
It is, or it's supposed to be. I know you're increasing the signage as we speak, right? I don't know how effective that would be because people coming off the city where it is, what is it, on the city side? 35, going 45. And you know, we've had trouble in the past getting people to slow down. Even traffic enforcement will be difficult because of the lack of sight lines on that section of Library Road. If you don't know, it's where it's across from the cemetery. So there's that steep hill going up.
Are they trying to build a new facility there, or are they keeping it the
So-
same? Because it's 4,000 square feet and only 5 bedroom. I mean, how much traffic is associated with that?
Exactly.
So-
That is a question.
Some of the social media conversation has lacked the context of the specific plan. So Bob, I don't know if anybody reached out to our office specifically to see the site plan that goes along with this. But so the special exception, which kind of by zoning definition, it's a use that's permitted in a district, but requires this hearing in front of the zoning hearing board. And in this instance, this use has several specific use regulations. So their task is to come to the zoning hearing board to show that they meet these standards. So the application is to turn the existing home And then conceptually, the site plan shows a 1,150 square foot building addition to turn that existing home plus addition into this assisted living concept. And in the application, it says that it would be for a maximum of 8 residents. And there would be no staff, like live-in staff, but it would be staffed 24 hours per day. So that's essentially the plan detail that was shown. One of the regulations within the specific use chapter is the very first one is that the use must be connected to public water and sewer. To our knowledge, this building is connected to neither. There is a sewer easement on the neighboring 90 and 94 Byberry through a property on Hillside. So if there's any common ownership element, I guess conceivably, they could enter into an easement together to run sewer out the rear of this property down 90 and 94 and down to Hillside. Public water would be a different consideration. I think the closest main is at the corner of Pine and Byberry. I don't know if there's an ability to go to the rear with another easement, but these are details that were not provided for in their special exception application. So unless they come into this hearing on Thursday with better specifics about that, I mean, obviously the zoning hearing board is a separate quasi-judicial entity from the township, but without those details, I don't conceivably see how the zoning hearing board would be able to grant the special exception. But we'll, I guess, see that process through. The reason I raised in my memo that perhaps the board was interested in either taking a position or authorizing Solicitor Rice to do something on the commissioner's behalf is just with the potential kind of change of use from something that is residential today to something that's defined as a non-residential use. Was there any interest of something that you would ask the zoning hearing board to be mindful of, or would you write a letter in support of or in opposition to something of that nature? So I guess we wanted to open that up for discussion with the board. Also, in the hypothetical that say they do get the special exception, either by showing that they do have a way to meet the public utility obligation, or maybe they withdraw the application, submit for a variance from those regulations. If there's some path to get to the point where from a use perspective, they have taken care of that, this plan application still would require land development, which would then go through the planning process, which goes to the planning commission. And the ultimate decision is that of the board of commissioners. There is an existing driveway today for the house that has been at 106 Byberry for years. So if we think through what, if in a hypothetical land development application, what PennDOT would require from a highway occupancy perspective to make improvements in front of that house for safe access, the use that's described today is not dramatically different from the use of a single family home, say compared to more houses or something that has like a more intense daily turnover of traffic. So we don't know today what the standards would be that PennDOT would hold them to. Objectively, it is in proximity to that hill. So I think that is a relevant consideration, but at least for what is going to the zoning hearing board on Thursday evening, it's not a final approval that would allow this use to begin the next day if the special exception is granted. There's still a significant public process that would be ahead of them. So I just wanted to share that as context and then see if the board has any direction they would like to give to Solicitor Rice.
I have to bring it up because there is a small but growing movement amongst people in your words, Chris, who are actively against this and are planning on going to the zoning hearing board. So they may be noisy, but I wanted you to know.
Okay, that's fine.
I think
I appreciate that, but they haven't contacted me, so.
yeah.
I would probably like to request, I would like to request that Solicitor Rice send a letter to the board reminding of the utility obligations. Would that be appropriate?
Yes.
Could be done, sure. Or authorizes it. I mean, the issue with the utilities is if they don't show up and say we have a connection, or an agreement for sewer, public water, then they need variances. They can't ask for the variances that same night because it hasn't been advertised for that. You have to advertise for all your relief. So, Joe Bagley, who's the board solicitor, would, bring that to the applicant's attention. Are they represented by counsel? I think they are.
Yes.
Yeah, Begley Carl.
Yes.
They seem to be the go-to for, these types of applications. So, I mean, that would be in the letter. I mean, I don't hear the board necessarily opposing this, but you want the letter of the law upheld. And
Just as a township's reminder.
yeah, and that if any relief is granted, well, by the way, it's a land development application, just so. You know, that's on the table. So, I mean, that would be the limit of what I could put together sometime tomorrow, send it to the parties. And, you know, if they don't have the utility exception, they have a problem. They either get turned down or they withdraw and they resubmit with the new application. But Bob, we haven't had any contact, right?
No, very little. Just they came in at the very last minute. And I haven't had any conversations with anyone.
Well, I mean, this may be, just throw it against the wall and see what happens, or,
So I think there may be a component of that, because I think another complication after you get through the zoning use consideration, there's also how the building code addresses the use and certain obligations for.
I think sprinklers.
it's almost institutional.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it kind of balances this weird line where the use itself actually is pretty innocuous, but may trigger these much more significant obligations under either zoning or the building code. So there would be a lot ahead. I also caution just the intensity of opinion about this project against what may, say if this doesn't find a path forward legally, this property in conjunction with other neighboring parcels that have been in front of this board before for development consideration. In front of the board, it only ever got to the point of the sketch plan. But just a 3 property-based bigger subdivision project may have an easier opportunity to show compliance and make the types of improvements necessary. So I think just an objective eye towards what this application is might be wise.
Well, there's conversations have been had. But, you know, folks have very different opinions. And that's shocking.
So, Bob, in-ground septic system,
That's what would be, that's what's on site right now.
do we have any idea how old it is?
The structure itself is quite old. I don't know how many times the system has been changed or added on to, but it's probably quite aged.
So would the county board of health have a record of?
If it was installed during the time period that the county health department had authority, but I don't.
Might be older than that.
It may even be older than that.
The house dates to 1747.
So you're probably looking at, you know, pipe, not ceramic pipes, what's the terracotta pipes in the drain field, but there's no, as far as we know, there's no leakages off site. Well, it's only one house,
There's only one house there, and but I've not heard, I've not received any complaints.
Oh, and one other just point of context, it's an old house. It is not in the township's designated historic district. So this would not be a project, if it were to proceed into land development, that would be subject to hard review. That said, there is a paragraph in the zoning ordinance for building additions in these residential districts that requires them to, I guess, be of similar character, because essentially the zoning foresees them, because it's in a residential district, it foresees, I guess, in relation to the buildings around it, it has this kind of ambiguous standard that would have some consistency with not turning like a big institutional use in the middle of a otherwise residential neighborhood. So there would be some ability for consideration of that in the board's land development process if it ever hypothetically got to that point.
I do like that they are not talking about tearing down the existing. It's, you know, it deserves some respect. having lived there. So,
Okay. There was one decision from the November hearing, application number 22-17. The application of Leo George, who sought variances to permit a partially covered deck. The variances were granted with 4 additional concerns. One applicant shall obtain township engineer's approval for the deck. Second applicant shall obtain grading plan approval. Third applicant shall receive sign off from specified neighbors and submit to the zoning officer. And fourth, the proposed egress window shall be approved by the code officer prior to issuance of the building permit.
Before we move on, did the board for 106 Byberry want to authorize John to send that letter?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So that's probably a motion.
A motion.
to authorize that.
I'd like to make a motion for Solicitor Rice to send a letter to the zoning hearing board reminding them of the public water sewer
Requirements.
requirements.
All of your words were perfect.
Second.
Motion and second to request Rice to represent the township at the zoning hearing board as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
And then finally, my liaison position is the Pennypack Ecological Restoration Trust. I just ask you again to donate your money to them so we can clear open space. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Owner. That completes the advertised and published agenda items. Is there any public participation for non-agenda items? There's one. Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mark DeGeorge, 2414 Dale Road.
Go on.
Okay, yes, this is a question about the Western project, Belmont Avenue. I'm sure you're aware of the name change of the complete parcel. How long has the township known about the name change? Can anyone answer that?
And so Western Development Company is still building with their subcontractor. Western Development Company operates senior living facilities under several names. So they started referring to this project as Crescent Fields several months ago.
Okay, so are there any implications with the name change? Along the way, all the drawings and anything on paper was not listed as Crescent Field. So legally, are any issues with completion?
No.
Okay.
Our development agreements and their escrow obligations all foresee this sort of thing happening for this sort of development. So if there's a legal entity name change, if they were to sell the entire project to a new entity, all of their current obligations under the development agreement, all of the permitting that they have to close out, all of that remains in place.
Okay, legal obligations, and that also means I heard it described as a line item. So all line items
If you're talking about the obligations in their financial security escrow, all of those remain. Even as the project existed with Western being involved, their general contractor, Birch Ridge, out of that escrow tabulation and all of the different line items within that. Some of them were responsibility of Birch Ridge. Some of them were the responsibility of B. Blair, who did the site work, and some of them are the responsibility of Western. All of those obligations remain, even if one of those main entities has changed.
My main concern would be the exterior cosmetics of this parcel. All the plantings, the
There's
fencing.
by the financial security, so is the fence, so is the trail.
Okay, so what I just mentioned, that's covered under some type of release of escrow.
So yes, you've probably heard us at several meetings over the last year and a half. I think we've done maybe 5 escrow releases so far based off of completed work. There's going to be another one that they've submitted for the January meeting. So we continue to review those as they meet the standards that allow us to release that escrow.
Okay, so in terms of township, there's no concerns with the name change whatsoever?
No, this is a standard process.
Okay. All right, thanks very much for your reply.
Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
The motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.